happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, thanks to the wicked team over at Toys Wonderland, we're going to be checking out the brand new Threezero MDLX Transformers Cliffjumper. Now, if you would like this or any of the other MDLX figures, I'll of course be sure to include links down in the description box below. And as we take a very quick look here at the packaging, we get some sick product shots of Cliffjumper. I mean, he looks so realistic. As we come around to the back, we get him utilizing some of the accessories, some really cool dynamic action poses, and we also get some pretty cool graphics here along the side of the box. This is the third entry, I believe, in the MDLX line. We recently reviewed Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, so looking forward to seeing how this one stacks up. I think the line as a whole has been super strong, and I know they have plans to continue this. There's going to be a Megatron and a Rodimus Prime, I think, which looks so cool, so cannot wait to get my hands on them. But let's check out this guy. And here we have him as he comes packaged in his robot mode, because for those of you who don't know, this is a non-transforming Transformer, which I know is going to put some of you off, but please, just hear me out. You know, this is still such a unique design, and what I like to think of is that this is basically what G1 would have been had it been in live action, and as far as I can tell, these are completely original designs by Threezero, so it's pretty cool to see them, you know, take complete creative freedom of some of these beloved Transformers characters. So as we take a look at the details, really sick looking head sculpt for Cliffjumper. I believe the body is a direct repaint of their version of Bumblebee, but still such a sweet design, and I think had this guy transformed, then it would have been into a nice cute red Volkswagen, because you can definitely see that in the nice sweet Volkswagen toes. But as we take a look at the detailing of the chest, I think the panel lining on this guy is off the charts. It looks so cool, really kind of hyper realistic gunmetal details, especially here for the inside of the torso. That looks so cool. I particularly like the waist belt as well, you know, it looks very Cybertronian-esque, and we get some nice light shades of grey for the forearms and the thighs, much like we would expect from G1. As we come around to the back, as you guys can see, really cool. I particularly like the detailing that we have here for what I imagine would be the rear of the Volkswagen, so that all looks really sweet, and the back of the legs too. I mean, check that out. And not to mention the kind of glossy metallic red they've used really does pop in person, so overall, such a wicked figure. I mean, they've even painted and detailed the underside of the feet, which is sick, and much like some of their larger DLX and premium scale figures, this one has a few pieces of die cast, so I think the ball joints in the shoulders and the hips are die cast, and there's definitely quite a bit of die cast in the shins, so it does add quite a bit of grounded weight to this guy. Now, in terms of articulation, you know, the bread and butter of Threezero figures, we do get a wicked ball joint, which can look up and down, side to side, as well as rotate left to right. The shoulders are on their own independent hinge joint, you know, so you can also move these pieces out. We do get ball joints here, so they can rotate in any way that you'd like. A nice bicep rotation, double jointed elbows, although due to the scale and how blocky the forearm is, it's basically just a single jointed range. But considering how small this guy is, I'm not too sure how they would have got around to that. But we do get a nice ball joint here out of the wrist, really great range out of the torso, so this can rotate forwards and backwards, and we get a pretty sick crunch, which can also crunch forwards that far, and it does reveal some pretty nice kind of metallic silver detailing at the back, so that's awesome. I'm not the biggest fan of how they've kind of done the waist belt, because when you move this piece out, it basically brings the side skirt out with it. It just looks a little strange in my opinion, but the hips can drop down, which allows for a wicked range kicking up. I mean, that is so sick. We also do get a double jointed knee, which works really well. There's also a bit of thigh rotation there at the top, and then as we come here to the ankles, these can rock forwards and backwards as well as side to side. So articulation, you know, as per tradition with Threezero, they are definitely not slacking, but at least in my opinion, I really think it's kind of the visual appeal that this guy has which ultimately sells you, because he just looks so awesome. And I'm hoping that if they ever do bring Cliffjumper back in the live action movies, I know it'd be quite difficult considering how he died in the Bumblebee movie, I hope that he looks more like this than if Michael Bay had potentially got his hands on him. Now, with this being a Threezero figure, we get quite a few accessories. So to start off, firstly, you're going to want to pop off the pre-existing head and then take this battle mask head sculpt, which I do believe is a distinctive sculpt to the one that came with Bumblebee, and that looks awesome. So we kind of get this metallic blue visor, really sick silver mouth guard, and the painting and the detail across the board is just as impressive as the first one. I mean, we get this really nice kind of black wash over the top just to make it look weathered and worn. And then as far as the hands go, considering he is so tiny, I imagine it would have been near enough impossible to give him individual finger articulation, but we also get a pair of dynamic action hands. So these are pretty cool, you know, in terms of the painting and the sculpting. We get a lot more gunmetal silver for the inside of the palm, so yeah, that's pretty sick. And then finally, we get a pair of blaster holding hands, which too, have been painted and sculpted pretty nicely. I will say that this one holds the blaster a lot better than this one, which, talking of, here we have it, which I believe is the same weapon that came packaged with their Bumblebee, but very nicely painted and sculpted. I mean, check out that dry brushing, it's just so realistic. And the only issue I would say I have with the accessories is, much like their Optimus and Bumblebee, this guy doesn't come with any kind of display base. You know, they include these massive kind of ridiculously sized display bases with the DLX figures, which, to be honest, I've had no need for at all. But with these smaller scale figures, which, you know, are a lot more manageable in terms of a display, I wish they'd come with some kind of display base so you could really get these in very dynamic poses when on the shelf. But as it stands, I mean, alternate hands, head sculpt and weapon wise, I think he comes with a decent amount. Now, as we take a look at a few comparisons, here we have the MDLX Cliffjumper compared alongside their version of Bumblebee. And as said previously, literally the same figure besides the head and the paint deco. But if history's anything to go by, that's pretty much correct. I mean, Bumblebee and Cliffjumper have forever been repaints and retools of one another. But considering this is an import release and one that is still pretty expensive, it maybe would have been cool to have seen Threezero just push the boat out a little further and had retooled some of the vehicle mode pieces, just so that it would seem like if he were to transform, it would be into a different vehicle. As if you own Bumblebee, then you're really not getting that much new here with this guy, and unless you're a massive completionist and you love repaints, then you know what, to be honest, it is a pretty expensive repaint. Here he is alongside the MDLX Optimus Prime, which, as you guys can see, is much bigger in terms of scale, but you know, I think this would be roughly accurate to how they both paired next to each other in G1. And if you're wondering how he scales alongside some mainline Hasbro figures, here we have the Earthrise Optimus Prime and the Netflix Volkswagen Deluxe Bumblebee, which is the same size as the Earthrise Deluxe Cliffjumper. And wrapping up on this review for the Threezero MDLX Cliffjumper, overall it is a very nicely done figure, but just know that for the most part it's identical to their version of Bumblebee. And you know, this guy still does cost a pretty penny, so it maybe would have been cool just to see Threezero push the boat out a little further and maybe retool some of those vehicle mode pieces, just so that it would seem like it would transform into something different, because I just think, you know, they could have spiced up the look of the bot mode just a little bit when in comparison to Bumblebee. But very nice painting and detail, you know, the articulation and the quality of these figures is top notch for what you pay for. You know, if you don't own Bumblebee and you prefer the color deco of Cliffjumper, then I'd go absolutely for it. And you know, if you're a completionist of this MDLX line, then this is definitely one to pick up. But if you're maybe cherry picking a few of the characters and you already own Bumblebee, then I'm not too sure that this one is going to be top of your list. If you are looking to add it to the collection, I'll of course be sure to include links down in the description box below. I have to give a massive thank you to Toys Wonderland for sending this my way here for a review, and until my next video, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.